Hello, everyone. This is Jar Assistant Gamer, and once again, back with me is my bastion of common sense, Lightning Dragon.
I've been taken out of the closet.
He's whoa.
Wait, don't take that the wrong way.
Okay. I was like, okay, that's not exactly what I expected to hear right there at the beginning of the. That's okay.
No, how about this? Okay, I've been taken out of the basement.
okay. That.
There we go. That's better. I couldn't think of anything. I'm like, my closet window or door is open, so I was thinking closet. But basement is a much better phrase.
And that's gonna be immortalized on the internet. Lightning Dragon admits he has come out of the closet.
I was freed from the closet.
Yeah.
I was allowed to come out of the closet to join on this episode.
Anyway, this is supposed to be Ship Hit Points Part 3. Because I thought because Hit Points, this is about shields and armor, and this is more of a generalized discussion because this really comes down to the nature of what the developers. Sorry, I keep thinking about the closet.
I've ruined the episode.
You have ruined the episode. I keep, I keep coming back to. Anyway, so basically, it depends on what the developers are looking at doing. Now, how important shields are and armor. A big example of the extremes. When you have Star Trek, which is very shield reliant. I mean, once the shields go down on something like the Enterprise, all hell breaks loose. But then you go to the other end of the extreme. You look like Battlestar Galactica, where they have no shields, and a nuke is coming in, and they just stick their fingers out the window and they flick them off because it's not going to matter because the ship can take it. So it's one of those.
Tangent off of that. Nuclear weapons actually only emit radiation when in space. There's no heat or anything because there's no oxygen to heat up. So it's mostly about the EMP that happens when you nuke a ship.
Well, I mean, whatever the reason was for firing nukes,
Sci-fi tropes.
Yeah, sci-fi tropes. Everyone thinks nuke is the biggest thing out there, But anyway, so the point is that how do we deal with, for starters, let's start with armor before we get to shields because that's closer to the core. And we've already dealt with armor and resistances based on, we're talking about the thickness of the skin of the ship, but I was talking about the grid system, and that can be factored into the resistance. Obviously something that's 1 inch thick is going to be less resistant than something that's 2 inches thick. If you're looking at, comparative those deflections and that it'll be adding in off the physical weapons. And when you're dealing with additional armor, like add-on armor, there's already been pictures a long time ago, and maybe I'll be able to dig one up and put one here, where they showed the Hornet had these hexagonal, ablative kind of armor
like
sections.
An ERA package you'd see on modern tanks.
Yeah, do you remember those pictures, Lighten? They showed the Hornet. Well, yeah,
it was really cool looking because I think they actually did a hex pattern on the armor itself.
Yes.
And then on top of it, they had the additional armor plating, and that looked really good. People thought it was going to be the Super Hornet, I believe, at the time, but it was just a thing they did.
And I'll have to dig that up because I have a lot of pictures and plus it's somewhere. But trust us, if I don't find it, it's not here. It did exist. So a blade of armor, if it comes to something that adds onto the ship, should add weight onto the ship, of course, for how the physics work. And when it's destroyed, like ERA would be destroyed, the weight should come off. Most of the weight. You obviously have the framing that was attached to, so like 90% of the weight goes away or whatnot. And basically that section underneath becomes vulnerable. A good example of this, if anyone here has played tank games, especially Armored Warfare, is that those ERA packs, when you blow it off the side of a tank, you end up with you can see like all the intact panels, and the one that's destroyed, there's just the frame around it. And now that section is almost perfectly vulnerable, like the ERA wasn't there. And so basically, that's my thoughts on a blade of armor. Lightning, what do you think about a blade of armor on ships? Do you think it should work similar to that, or?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the only way you should really do it. I mean, what you should do is you should factor in that you actually have to put a physical frame on it to actually mount the armor. And the frame, I think, really should probably be the heaviest part, because everything else is an explosive device. But again, we're dealing with space, so I think an actual ablative type armor would be better, like the space shuttle has, where it helps to like block heat and shock. So you think of it like a composite armor. You got like a ceramic plating that's on there, and
Yeah.
it's sitting in like the metal frame or whatever. And so, because honestly, in real space, you're mostly going to have like heat or kinetic damage. And
So
so you have like a missile or a bullet that comes in. The bullet's going to take a lot more before it destroys that, where the missile might instantly, it'll hit the blade of armor. Blade of armor gets destroyed, but you don't get destroyed by the missile or whatever.
yeah. So your thoughts is that the frame would actually be heavier than the armor plating.
Yeah, I think that'd probably be the kind of the best way to do it, because then it's not like, oh, you don't have any a blade of armor anymore. I back to 100% speed. You should be able to, you shouldn't be able to kind of like cheat the system that way. So I mean, you get to set up the entire vehicle to hang on to this. So there should be armor or weight value with the blade of armor on top of the actual frame, and you can never get rid of the frame armor. So no matter what, you're going to say sacrifice maybe 10-20% of your ship's maneuverability, depending on how heavy you go with that armor.
Interesting thought. I hadn't looked at it like that. And you may be right. So armor in and of itself. Um, is pretty straightforward when you're dealing with add-on. There's different ways you can approach it. Clearly, like lightning, and I have a different way of approaching it with weight. Though I definitely understand what he's saying there, because it does kind of make sense. You want to do have kind of a more permanent penalty for having that on there as it comes off. I can kind of get that. Uh, but shields, this is the part where I'm not going to crank out a lot of numbers on this one because this comes down to what the developers are looking for. My general thoughts is that as far as shields go, 50% of your stats is hit points, 50% of your stats is regen time. As far as importance, and you would adjust them like for example, you may have 10%, you may have a 50-50 split. 50% of your stat is based on your hit points, 50% of your stat is based on your effective stat is based on your regen time. Let's say 1 minute and let's say 1,000 hit points, and you want to raise it up 10%, so you have 1,100 hit points now for hit points, but your regen is 10% slower. So in this case, you're looking at 54, a minute 6 to basically regen instead of a minute. So basically, you adjust these scales up and down, so you could have different varieties of shields, whether low hit points, fast regen, or high hit points, low regen. And we do have some variety right now that are like resistant to missile damage or more resistant things like that. That's another factor as well. Definitely, shields are such a. I always think shields should be very resistant to physical damage because I would imagine that if we were to develop shield technology, the primary reason that we would develop it first and foremost is for high-speed space travel to keep dust, debris, things like that from punching holes in the hull. So it seems to me it's very appropriate. And this is where I disagree with Star Citizen about the idea of physical weapons doing always penetrating through to the hull, like the Gatlings and whatnot. Like, oh, 20% of damage always goes straight to the hull. Because to me, that is very much the opposite of what should happen when it comes to shields. Those things, in my opinion, would have been developed to keep those kind of things out from the start during travel, like a quantum drive or whatnot. To me, bullets should just not be a consideration for very much at all when it comes to those kind of defenses. What do you think, Lightning?
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to make the game stupid. Monitors turning off. They're making the game kind of semi-realistic, is what they're pitching anyway. And
Hmm.
you look at the modern space program, right? Well, when they send up a space shuttle or a capsule or whatever the hell they're doing, I mean, it's not really armor plating, but it's still, to block out background radiation and all that stuff. So that's what the modern stuff is using now. So imagine, oh well, now we're going to add armor plating onto it because these ships are going to get shot at. So, well, the armor plating may only be designed to block, if they get past the shield, right? But the majority should be to keep out radiation and stuff, because radiation is freaking everywhere, and you can't really get away from it, and it's not going to. It's going to penetrate a shield. The shield's just a barrier of energy, basically. So, yeah, I mean, we've talked about it before. I don't know if it was in a podcast or not, but
Yeah, but do you agree with CIG's approach to 20%
no.
penetration? I mean,
No, not really. I
yeah.
mean, at the most, I mean, I think the most you should get would be 20%, and that's like the shield busting type weapon, but it should have a drawback. Like, Gatling guns, they have like a 1% penetration rate on shields, right? But they're rapid fire. You can do a lot of damage. You nickel and dime the shields to kind of overload basically, or to do enough penetration damage and you
Well,
damage like an engine,
that's
or
basically
you
you're saying
have
like different ammo loadouts, like specialty ammo
well,
that
not
has
really
more
ammo
effect.
in general, but like the kind of guns. So you'd have the Gatling gun example, or you'd have like the shield penetrator example, which it's a big kinetic round, but it's mostly designed to go through the shield, so you don't get the same like DPS level, like you were talking about with your weapons thing. You kind of want to balance that DPS, and you should factor in
Hmm.
shields as well.
See, my thoughts on the subject is that for the most part, physical weapons. Now I can understand what you're saying. Like if it's heavy enough to punch through, like a meteorite would punch through, or whatnot, if it was strong enough, even more than the shields could stop. I get that to a degree. My thoughts in it is that the shields would are basically the strongest thing that they're against is physical, because to me that seems to be the way that they would be designed to be, and it would take a lot more effort for a physical weapon to go through. Energy weapons would drain them a lot quicker because uh, they of the nature of the way the shield's resistances are. But then again, I mean, I guess you could have physical shields as much as you could have energy shields or shielding or whatnot.
But I mean,
Uh,
you're talking about like nitty gritty stuff like
yeah.
customizing your loadout, and that's for the future far
Oh yeah.
beyond, in more of like the meta game kind of thing where
Yeah.
I have a ship that has this style of armor and I have a ship with this style of shield, which gives it like a 90% overall protection versus like a standard one is like 50-50. I
Yeah.
mean, that's like custom building your ship. They need to have something. These are the basics. This is what everything is based
And
off of, and then go from there.
and I guess that's why I'm kind of looking at all this and I'm asking a lot of questions because, I mean, all this aside, this is why I said the shields and armor was left for last because it is kind of arbitrary. We don't know. We saw a picture of armor a long time ago, and shields for the most part. Some ships have one arc, some ships have two, some ships have four. Capitals might have six, but there's no. I feel that there's a lot of details when it comes to this with that particular aspect between the armor and shield that's left in the air. But it's not just that. When it comes to the ship theory in general in Star Citizen, I feel that there's been no clear defining mission statement, if you will. I mean, for what their goals are, other than I know they said Newtonian. We've had some changes to the flight model, but and we've had they talk about the penetration 20% or whatnot, physical weapons, but for the most part, I feel that there's a lot more questions than there are answers, and that's I'm not saying that they don't know what they're doing, but at the same time, I'm curious, and I think
We
anyone
don't know
who's
what they're doing either.
yeah, I mean, yeah, well, I mean, yeah, as an open alpha development cycle, when you have people that basically they download the spreadsheets, they go to the files of the game, or they put the information together themselves. To me, as open alpha, when we're looking at this information or trying to look at this information, it should be made available to us. Hey, here is this. This says this. I mean, even if it's just a spreadsheet form and it looks boring to a lot of people, there's a lot of people like myself who like to go and look at that data, and then give feedback because sometimes I mean it really helps to get an idea of exactly what their thought processes are and
You
I
want to hear a terrible example of what happens when someone has full creative control with no outside influence?
yeah, go ahead.
It's the Star Wars prequels. I mean, woo, I know, shocking, but the original Star Wars movies, there was other
Yeah.
people that were saying, hey, George, let's not do that. Hey, George, let's, do something else here or whatever, right? So, we have the original Star Wars trilogy, which is good. I mean, there's, obviously there's some plot holes, but for the most part, it was an amazing trilogy. Then you have the new one, not the new one that just came out, but the prequels, and they're just garbage because no one could, hey, you want to think this over before we do this? And you can apply that same logic to Star Citizen. I
Love
mean,
me, love me.
it's
Sorry, if
it's
you
not
guys
a
haven't
it's not
seen
a
that.
direct comparison, but it's kind of in that same thing where you have all these just really smart and brilliant people on the forums that
Yeah.
are just buried in all this garbage, but they have great ideas and they
Right.
show, hey, if you do this, it'll come out better. And for the most part, it's just kind of like they're just doing whatever they want, and it's kind of like, guys, you stop and pay attention, or shit's gonna just blow up in your face.
Well, my concern is that by the reference to the love me thing, guys, is there's a guy called Dorkly on YouTube that does these great videos, different skits like Pokemon or Star Wars, and it was George Lucas doing this revamp of the whole Star Wars series where Han's shooting everything first, and he's at the end, it's like he's like love me.
That was Dorkly.
That was Dorkly.
Ah, okay.
Anyway, so yeah, it's a great channel, guys. Check that out sometime. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, like a lot of developers right now that they have for developing the flight model and the control schemes, they're all FPS guys, and this is a real problem in my opinion because uh, we don't have anyone in there that's come from that generation of games or play with it. We had one, but he left to go work at Blizzard, and so we've got basically when you look at the resume of the new guy that comes in and he worked on
Call of Duty Modern Battlefield Front 4.
exactly, so you're like, oh great, what's your job? My job is I build the flight model, and you're just like, oh please kill me. So it's just like, so as everyone at this point in time who knows me knows the way I feel about things when it comes to what I'm looking for in the game, and I'm looking for what was promised. I'm looking for going back to the old school Wing Commander kind of experience with more updated physics, and not looking for Strike Zero Part 2. And I think there's just a lot of theory craft out there. There's a lot of things that are interesting to me. And but anyway, this is dragging on long, and Lightning has to get back into his closet, I'm sure. and anyway, guys, I just wanted to make a kind of a cover this last one in a more generic way because there's really no hard numbers I can provide when it comes down to nature and intent when it comes to shields and armor, and that is one of those things I said that they have to define a little bit more clearly for us. Anyway, this is Jar Citizen Gamer and Lightning Dragon, and once again, we probably just wasted our 20 minutes of your time, even though that wasn't our intention. And y'all have a great night. Thanks for listening. Or it could be day two. Could be. Have a good one ever.
Yeah.
And I'll talk to you all later.
Hopefully you enjoyed the video, because that's what the point is.
No, it's not. The point is it's because I'm bored. No, just kidding. All right, guys. All right, have a good one.
Bye-bye.